You ever look at a company like Amazon or Apple and just wonder? How in the world did Jeff Bezos or Steve Jobs see a future that pretty much no one else could? I mean, was it just a stroke of genius? A lucky guess? Or is there something else going on? A specific set of skills that lets them see opportunities that are hiding in plain sight for the rest of us? Well, today we are cracking open the research to decode the very DNA of the innovator. All right, so here's the game plan. First, we're going to shatter a huge myth about what makes an entrepreneur tick. Then, we'll get to what really matters. It's not about who they are, but what they actually do. We're going to break down the 4 key discovery skills they all share. After that, we'll see how those skills power the mental engine that connects all the dots. We'll look at the motivation that fuels the whole thing, and finally, we'll wrap it all up to help you unlock that innovator inside yourself. So let's just jump right in with a big idea that's out there about founders, right? That they're just a different breed, that they're wired for taking huge risks, or they're more comfortable with chaos, or they just have some special personality that sets them apart. I mean, it feels true, doesn't it? But is it actually the case? Well, this quote right here just pulls the rug out from under that whole idea. For decades, researchers tried to find that one special entrepreneurial personality. And guess what? They came up pretty much empty-handed. When you put successful innovators head-to-head with successful corporate executives and you test for things like risk-taking, the differences are tiny. Sometimes they're not even there. So if it's not some magic personality trait you're born with, then what on earth is it? And this leads to a massive, fundamental shift in thinking. The researchers realized they were asking the wrong question. So they stopped asking who is the entrepreneur and started asking something way, way more powerful. And that's the whole ballgame, right there. Innovation isn't a personality type. It's a set of active behaviors, things you can learn, things you can practice. This is a total game changer because it means that coming up with breakthrough ideas isn't some mystical gift. Nope, it's the direct result of deliberate, repeatable actions. It's a skill, or really a set of skills. Which brings us right to the heart of what we're talking about today. The research boiled it all down to 4 main behaviors, these discovery skills that consistently separate the true innovators from everyone else. And these aren't just, quirky habits. They are active tools for gathering information about the world. Okay, first skill up, questioning. Now look, everybody asks questions, but innovators and managers ask completely different kinds of questions. A manager, they tend to ask questions to make the current system better. How can we make this 10% more efficient? But an innovator, they ask questions that blow up the system itself. They ask, why do we even do this in the first place? What if we did the exact opposite? They're always poking at the assumptions that everyone else just accepts as fact. And this is the perfect example of just how powerful one simple, challenging question can be. Michael Dell wasn't just thinking about how to sell computers better. He was asking why the entire industry was set up the way it was. That single question, why does it cost 5 times more to buy the machine than the parts inside of it? That question tore down the old business model and built an absolute empire. The second skill is observing, and this builds right on top of that questioning impulse. Now, this is not passive people watching. We're talking about active, intense observation, almost like being an anthropologist. Innovators watch how people actually behave, not just what they say they do. They're on the hunt for those little frustrations, the clever workarounds people invent, the surprising things that signal a hidden need. And that's where they find the opportunity. I love this story. It's the origin of Intuit, the company that makes Quicken and TurboTax. Scott Cook didn't do some huge market research study. He just watched his wife get frustrated trying to manage their finances. He saw a common, everyday problem and realized, hey, a computer could solve this. So many huge ideas don't start in a fancy boardroom. They start by just watching the world with fresh eyes. All right, discovery skill number 3 is experimenting. Innovators are tinkerers deep down, and this can look like a few different things. It might be intellectual, running thought experiments like Pierre Omidyar did when he imagined a perfect market, which led him to create eBay. It could be physical tinkering, literally taking stuff apart to see how it works, like Steve Jobs was famous for. And maybe most importantly, it's about constant hypothesis testing, trying out new things just to see what happens, and treating failure as data, not as defeat. This from Jeff Bezos really nails the mindset. For innovators, it's not about running one perfect, flawless experiment. It's about running thousands of them. For Bezos, the secret to keeping Amazon ahead is to make it cheap and easy to try things so they can just do more of it. Why? Because more experiments means more learning, more data, and way more chances to stumble upon that next big breakthrough. It's a numbers game.
And the fourth and final skill is idea networking. Now, hold on. I know what you're thinking. Everyone networks, and you're right. But most people network to sell something, to get a promotion, to get resources. Innovators network for one primary reason: to get new ideas. They go out of their way to find people with totally different backgrounds, different expertise, different ways of seeing the world, because they know that's where the really new stuff comes from, at the intersection of different worlds.
And this is just such a great practical example of what that looks like. Elliot Jacobson didn't just cross his fingers and hope to bump into interesting people. He built a system for it. He actively engineered collisions with new perspectives. The goal of that lunch wasn't to close a deal. It was to hear something he'd never heard before, to get an idea that he just couldn't find inside his own little bubble.
Okay, so we've got the 4 key behaviors: questioning, observing, experimenting, and networking. But how does that, how do those actions actually become a brilliant new idea? How do you get from watching someone get frustrated to building $1 billion company? What's the aha moment?
And this is it. This is the big one. This is the question we've been working our way towards. If it's not some special personality they're born with, why do some people see opportunities that are invisible to everyone else? And here it is, the answer. It's actually pretty straightforward. Those 4 behaviors we just talked about, they are all just mechanisms for collecting information. They are how innovators stuff their brains with a huge, diverse, and sometimes weird collection of ideas and data points. They just have more raw material, more mental building blocks to play with than the average person. This chart shows you the incredible math behind creativity. Think of every idea as a Lego block. Now, if you add more blocks one by one, that's linear, arithmetic growth. The number of potential combinations you can make with those blocks grows geometrically. It just explodes. The more different kinds of knowledge you have, the more chances your brain has to suddenly snap 2 totally unrelated ideas together to create something brand new. So what's happening here is that these behaviors all feed a specific mental muscle called associational thinking. That's the fancy term for it, but really it's just the ability to connect the dots. It's what allows you to see a link between a calligraphy class and a personal computer, for example. The 4 discovery skills give your brain more dots, and associational thinking is the engine that draws the lines between them. And nobody said it better than Steve Jobs. He's saying that real creativity often feels less like they're inventing something from scratch and more like you're just discovering something. It's not about making something out of thin air. It's about having all these different experiences and pieces of knowledge rattling around in your head, which allows you to see a connection that, once you see it, seems like it was there all along. So we have the behaviors that collect the dots, and we have the mental process that connects the dots. But there is one final, absolutely critical piece of this whole puzzle. What is it that motivates innovators to even bother doing all this work in the first place? What's the fuel for the engine? It's this. At their core, innovators have a deep, fundamental bias against the status quo. They are just not satisfied with the way things are. They are driven by that desire to, as Jobs famously put it, put a ding in the universe. They see shaking things up not as destruction, but as progress, as a way to make the world a better place. This is the fire. This constant dissatisfaction with good enough is what drives them to always be questioning, observing, experimenting, and networking, hunting for a better way. Okay, so let's bring this all home. The big takeaway here is that becoming more innovative isn't about wishing you had a different personality. It's about changing your behavior. It's about consciously and deliberately practicing the skills of questioning, observing, experimenting, and networking. And it's all fueled by a real desire to challenge the way things are. It is an active process, not a passive one. And that brings me to the final thought I want to leave you with. Because this isn't just some interesting theory, it's a call to action. So as you leave here today, I want you to ask yourself one question. In your field, in your company, in your industry, what is one core belief, one fundamental assumption that is so old and so universally accepted that nobody even thinks to question it anymore? Start there, because that's where innovation begins.